I shared that with another entrepreneur that I was talking to about a week ago. And he said, so yeah, it must cost you a fortune to open these clinics. And I said, well, what? No, it costs us $0. And he's like, so you've opened 56 clinics and you have no out-of-pocket expense on each location?
Yeah, I'll talk the whole time.
I mean, it's over. If you do that, Alan, it's over.
You got to stop. You can't keep going. But Krista, go ahead and start it. But
Okay.
Caleb, what I am curious. How many animals did you end up getting by the end of that thing?
Between me and my two boys, we got 14 different species of animal. So the hunting was incredible. Like I'm a hunter. That's my favorite thing. The hunting was amazing, but just the memories that we had and that we captured as a family, because my girls don't hunt, but just being in that landscape and seeing those animals and the friendships and the memories is just super special for us. So
what country were you in? Were you in South Africa?
we were in the northern tip of South Africa. So we were about 1,000 yards from Botswana. We were right on the Limpopo River. So at one point in time, we could see Zimbabwe, Botswana, and South Africa from where we were. So kind of up in that confluence.
That's cool. What was the most exotic animal that you caught?
Well, that I caught? I love non-hunters.
Or killed.
Yeah, so he caught with his hands, like bare hands.
Yeah.
Like,
no, most people don't like to hear it, but I've had, since I was a young boy, I had a dream of hunting lion. I read Hemingway and Rourke and Roosevelt and all those people. And so this year I got to hunt a super mature old lion, worn teeth. He probably didn't have but a couple of years left before that lion hunt. I actually had both of my boys with me on the hunt. Wow. And it was dangerous and it was exciting and it was hard. It was the hardest thing. We were sweating and scratched up, but it's something I'll never forget. And I hope they don't ever forget. So,
well, they won't.
So you didn't catch the lion? You hunted the lion?
Yeah, we went ahead. Yeah, it was strategic.
Is that kind of like chiropractic and sublimations and?
That's exactly right.
We had somebody who came in as a success partner. I won't name names, and the guy he sent up 2 minutes out, he's talking about sublimations and and it's just funny in a group of chiropractors, like a group of hunters. It's like ding 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 ding. They're not one of us. That's funny. Well, thank you for coming on, guys. And thank you. We do these on the months. Typically, we don't have anything going on for UAC. So welcome to all the UAC Nation out there. This is a master class, and we tip into the genius that is UAC. There's so many different people doing different businesses. And Caleb and Chad, a lot of you have not gotten to meet yet. Their big annual event was happening when we were out in Boca for Genesis. And so you guys didn't get to meet them there, but they've had a lot of influence in the room. There's a number of people who have their clinics in place. And what grabbed me most is you guys, there's a lot of people in UAC who are expanding multiple clinics, whether it's functional clinics, subluxation clinics, franchise clinics. They're doing roll-ups, but you guys stumbled on a really unique model. And that's what I want to unpack today is how you guys are up to. How many clinics are open and how many are in the pipeline now?
50. Right now we have 56, but there's 47 open. So the rest are in onboarding.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And so just to grab everybody's attention, we're not just talking a couple clinics here. You guys have done this at scale. You have a team that's done it at scale. There's amazing systems and process and procedure that's happening at scale. But I want to get into the uniqueness of how you've done this. And but before we get there, I think a little history is appropriate. So can you guys just kind of tee us off? How did you two come together? Where'd you meet? What were your paths that then brought you back together here at Genesis?
Yeah, go ahead, Caleb.
Chad and I met in chiropractic school, believe it or not. So this last, I think it was 2 weeks ago, was 19 years in practice for both of us. We were in class around the same time. We knew each other from school and all that sort of stuff. And so I was on the path of fire-breathing chiropractor. I've read the green books. I love the philosophy. I built a practice, high-volume chiropractic practice on those principles. And it's something that is part of me. It's in my DNA. And so I wanted to see 1,000 people a week. Chad looked at me like I had lost my mind. He's like, why would you do that? And so from the get-go, Chad has always wanted to do spinal decompression. And from very early on out of school, he's been doing almost exclusively spinal decompression with the DRX 9000. Not really adjusting a lot of people, which to me was almost sacrilegious. Is what are you thinking? And so after years and years and years in practice, it's like, man, the chiropractic miracles they're endless. But the patients I had dealing with disc issues, I felt helpless, for lack of better terms. And if I could get somebody to go all the way across Dallas, essentially to Dr. Chad's office, it was like they all got better. And so eventually I started looking at this, and I reached out to Chad, and he and I talked on the phone, and it's one of those things that's just meant to be. We've obviously kept in contact this whole time. We've done a couple of other things together, but when we talked about this, he's like, let's open an office in McKinney, which is basically half in between his principal decompression office and my chiropractic office. And let's just see what happens. And we called the guy. Long story short, it's like every door opened, and it was the easiest thing we've ever done. Within 30 days, we were in business together. And man, everybody's got a million partnership horror stories, but this is one that the good Lord has just ordained, and both of our strengths are different than each other, uniquely different than each other, but we mesh together really good. And it's been really incredible. So we took everything that Chad knows about the technology that we use, the protocol that he's developed about the disc, how to position it, how to sell it, how to actually get people better. And the things that I've learned from a high volume standpoint and coaching standpoint of systems and procedures and aesthetic and marketing. And we just married those things together, and it's just gone like peas and carrots.
Mm-hmm. So Chad, there is a component to what you guys do of IP. I think you take this DRX machine, but then you've kind of, can you talk briefly on that? Like how you use that to actually get in and create more of a negative pressure to suck a disc up is different than a lot of people doing decompression. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we use the DRX 9000 because all the studies are done on that machine. And so there's been a few, like way back in 02, 03, 04, they were doing studies and they were using different machines, AccuSpine and things like that. But really in the world of decompression, it's the VaxD, then the AccuSpina, now which became the DRX 9000. And that machine is unique in the market because it can change the angle to treat the specific disc that's bad. So instead of saying, let's do decompression on somebody that's like head to toe pull, it's not really much different than just hanging from the pull-up bar. And so to create a negative pressure, you have to be able to focus the angle of pull on one disc. And when you did that, all the studies showed, like way back in the early days, it was that famous 86% success rate. And it's just steadily gone up through the years as they've refined the studies more and more. But the DRX is really the only way you can achieve that.
And
but like you were mentioning, Alex,
you guys do cycles too, right? There's a pulsing that's a little different in how you guys do it. I think you shared.
Yeah. You mean as far as the treatment itself?
Yeah. And protocol.
Yeah. So back in the old days, there was no standard of care at all. You would have chiropractors all over the country buy a DRX, and then this guy would do it this way, and then the manufacturer said, "We'll do it this way," and then that might not work, and so everybody was doing it different. And so what I wanted to do is create a pure standard of care. And so I tweaked the protocol that was originally out there, and so and by doing that, we're able to identify how a patient heals through treatment on a very specific level, and then they follow patterns of healing. And then by doing that, you can get the patient from point A to point B a better person than when they started most of the time. And so my protocol is pretty unique, I would say. When I mention it to some people, they look at me like I've, just created something crazy, but like I did something wrong to some guys, but it makes the most sense. And now with 56 clinics, we treated 50, 60,000 people now. I mean, it's the real deal.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so how long did you guys run it together before you went, we're on to something? And talk us through a little bit about the arc of that, because you marry up, it's going well. How long did you ride that before you started to get inclinations of going bigger?
I think that we never really had where we're at now. What we didn't sit around and go, here's where we're headed.
Yeah.
It's just happened for us more than it's happened because of us. But we opened this office, and it's like, man, in a chiropractic office, and what I would consider a real deal, high volume chiropractic office, seeing 500 or 600 people a week, 21 hours, 80 to 125,000 a month in collections, mostly cash. Then I started seeing this side gig, this Genesis office that we opened together, start to compete with that, and quickly. And I was like, how I'm spending like 8 or 9 hours a week down here just in the margin. And all of a sudden the cash revenue that's coming in and the patients that were getting better that I didn't have a good success rate of getting better in chiropractic. So I was like, holy cow, like this is a real thing. Like this is big. And so we opened another office, a standalone office. And you know what comes with the standalone office of, rent and negotiating leases and tenant improvement funds and terms of leases and all that sort of stuff, and then furnishings and so on and so forth. And so we opened that office, and we were having some drinks with a friend of ours. And he was like, well, why don't you guys open a Genesis back and neck inside of his already wildly successful chiropractic office? He's like, I'm doing decompression, but I'm doing it with these other machines, and they're collecting dust. Like most chiropractors doing decompression, their machines are like the proverbial
treadmill
treadmill. Yeah, that's sitting in their living room with their with their laundry on. And so we decided to do that, and man, it scaled so quickly that he told a friend who told a friend, and those friends told friends. We've never pitched this. We've never marketed it. Most of the people that we're working with are just brought to us, and it's been really incredible to see it scale, knowing that all we were doing is putting systems and procedures in place to make it easy for us to have the one office. But when it works really well for the one office, it's replicatable, and that's where we're at now.
And that's what really grabbed me was immediately the logistics of, all right, 56 offices. That's a lot of leases. That's a lot of build outs. That's a lot of equipment. And Chad looked at me and said, well, no, that's the great part is we haven't bought any of that. Time out. What do you mean? So explain a little bit how it works now. Who do you look for? What kind of doc checks the box, and how do you put one of these in a clinic, and how do you guys structure it, and give some of the secret sauce of how you guys have scaled without having to come up with a fund of, $100 million to make this thing happen?
Yeah, it's been pretty awesome. I shared that with another entrepreneur that I was talking to about a week ago. And he said, so yeah, it must cost you a fortune to open these clinics. And I said, well, what? No, it costs us $0. And he's like, so you've opened 56 clinics and you have no out-of-pocket expense on each location? I said, no. And so we kind of got into some of it. Like Caleb said, we don't really look for doctors. But the blessing of this is we get to pick and choose who we work with. And so we're not getting I don't know, Caleb and I are great people to work with. We're super honest, and we want to work with people that we like and that we can trust. And whenever a referral, like a doctor, like that very first office, Dr. Fowler, he said, well, let's tell everybody else about it. He told his friend. So I guess the doc that checks the box is already doing well. They're not trying to pay their bills. And then when we add Genesis, the revenue that they can get out of that space that's not producing any money now becomes a real financial thing. Yeah. And so the systems that we put in there, I guess, like Caleb was saying, the systems is what makes it, but we get to be picky on who we work with. I don't know, Caleb, how would you describe the person that we're looking for? Is we don't really have like a blueprint. I mean, we talk to every single one of these people before we start.
Yeah, honestly, we've turned down more doctors than we've taken on. And so most of the people that we're working with are already wildly successful. They're great chiropractors. They're great communicators. They're usually 10 to 15 years in practice. And so all of us, I want to see 1,000 people a week, younger version of myself now with 4 kids and multiple businesses. I don't want to see 1,000 people a week. And so some of my priorities have changed, but I've honed my skills and abilities as a communicator to where now, if I could take advantage of utilizing those skills and communicating and basically sharing and selling a commodity that I don't have to bend over the table to deliver, that's largely staff driven, but is congruent with my principles. Well, that's what was exciting to me. And so most of the chiropractors we're working with are principled, if you will, subluxation based minded, family oriented, good humans that don't need something else to help them pay their bills. They're already successful in their own right. And so those people are the people that take coaching really well, and not coaching, but it's like, oh, no, I don't want to think about it. Tell me how to do it. I'll do these things. I'll put these things in place. And then they see almost an immediate outcome. Chad and I have beat this Chick-fil-A analogy to death, but I really feel like it's a great one, that if you open a Chick-fil-A, as long as you put it in the right area and you do the things that they tell you to do, you're going to make great chicken sandwiches and they're going to sell. Like but you don't change the recipe, you do the recipe. And so the doctors that we have are working the recipe, and their outcomes for getting patients better, which is the most important thing to all of us, is high. But their revenue stream and generation is sometimes it's just uncanny. It's a little unbelievable where some of these chiropractors are starting to make more money on their Genesis side than they are their very successful chiropractic side, with a little less stress. I don't want to say it's a stress less, but less stress, less overhead, less worry. And so that's been exciting. One of the testaments to the success that Chad and I have had is we have been very judicious in the people that we work with. And the good Lord has just brought us some of the most amazing partners and now friends that, like Chad said, they're friends. It's fun. We're all in it to win. It's a team full of tigers, and it's been a great time.
So I want to break this down for the UAC membership, because I've really kind of done a study on what you guys have done. And there's a few components, I think. We just touched on the first one. You do have a clear avatar of who you work with. You know, you guys aren't trying to save the day. These are usually docs who are successful. They've got some extra space in their clinic. That's a big variable. So now you guys don't have to find a new lease. There's already a home for this place. You have a specific product. You know, you're not offering 50 things. It's very specific. We use this machine. We have this protocol. So I think that simplifies this. Then what else I've seen is you have built a really impressive onboarding team, and maybe the most important component of this is you guys have built a marketing team, because there's so many of these. You know, I've been very open. I opened and failed on a regenerative clinic, and we could never quite dial in what the product was because there's so many things, and we struggled with the marketing. And there's so many marketers. And do you market weight loss? Do you market regenerative health? Do you market stem cells? Is that legal? And then I even see when people bring in Shockwave, when they bring in different, you know, neuropathy programs, even when you bring in decompression, well, who does the marketing? There's this marketer, there's that marketer. We've got some great marketers in UAC that market some of these different programs. What I found unique is you guys do that in-house with a team that you've built up. Can you talk a little bit about your onboarding team and your marketing team? Because I think you've got the front end, okay, simple product, overlays in a successful clinic, but then it's the back end that I think that's really getting you guys motion, which is how you're bringing people on with onboarding with the team you put in place in the marketing. So can you break that down a little bit?
Yeah, well, go ahead, Chad. Why don't you talk about the onboarding team and I'll talk about the marketing?
That sounds perfect. So the coolest part of the team that we built is most of them started with us from the very beginning. And so we didn't want to ever, like when we opened up that very first McKinney clinic, you know, there was a lot of things we didn't know. There's a lot of things we didn't get right. And we were like, well, we just started developing procedures. Caleb had I had the technical side procedure, and Caleb had the systems procedures for the office. And so like our COO now was our first really hire in our McKinney office. And so we started seeing what worked, what didn't, why didn't it work, how can we fix it, and then just let's push through that for a solution. And once it worked, it became part of the foundation. And so all of the people, most of the people on our corporate team were all employees of ours through that process.
Okay.
And so now they all know exactly what to do when they see an issue. It's like Caleb will say, we'll see the smoke before the fire, and we know exactly what that means internally so we can get ahead of that. So if we see an issue, well, now we know what to do with that, and we have a very exact solution that always works because we've already figured all this stuff out. As far as the marketing, and he'll explain this, I was the first one I was on TV and radio forever.
Actually, sorry, Chad, I don't want to pause there though, because so many times, having scaled multiple clinics myself, that you just glossed over what really is like to be able to take somebody and take them through each of the, here's our EHR. You guys have built your own EHR. Let's touch on that. And I think the genius part of this, you guys, if you don't mind me sharing, you built it off Go High level. So it dovetails with your marketing. So how you train somebody on the EHR, how you train the staff to do all the, to move everything through Go High level so that actions are carried through, how you take notes, how you do the protocols. You're covering every step so people really can follow your recipe. Like you've got to clearly lay out the recipe to follow the recipe. And you guys don't have any gaps in there. And what's really neat is there are all these people that have been loyal to you, who've come up with you, who know the business because they helped build this with you guys. And so I had to recap that, check, because I think a lot of times I see different practitioners in UAC, they're starting to scale, but they miss that component of how are you going to replicate this in other offices, and how in depth that is inside of Genesis, who's doing each component of that, how well thought out that is what I think is translated to get growing as fast as you guys have, because you can have a great system. This was my problem. I had 1,000 a week office. As soon as I stepped out of it, I couldn't replicate it, and I tried. It's not, and so the fact that you guys have been able to replicate this without you speaks volumes to the staff you have in there. Anyways, with that, I just had to give that recap, Chad, because that's really important.
Oh, that's awesome.
What about the marketing then? Yeah, what route did you go before you guys landed on the marketing? Then we'll talk about that.
Yeah, so I did TV and radio, and I'm glad that you said that about our team. I could talk for 35, 40 minutes on our team. And so if I got on a tangent, I'd be like Caleb, you'd have to wave your hand and have to stop. So I didn't want to break down each thing, but we have been blessed to work with the people that we have and that brought us up through this. I did TV and radio forever, and the budget kept going up and the leads kept coming down, and it just never meshed right and couldn't dial in the right person. And then Caleb's like, "Oh, I've got the fix for this lady I know. She's worked under Russell Brunson. She's done all this stuff." And I'm like, "Dude, that's a terrible idea." And he talked me into it, and he's gonna explain it. But it was a funny story because I was the first person to be like, "No, that is the worst idea I've ever heard. If you're not spending $25,000 a month, there's no way you can make it work. You can't spend $5,000 and make it work." Go ahead, Caleb.
Well, but before I hit the marketing, I'll just say with our team, so far we haven't advertised and hired somebody that we've never known, like new to us, and then they're on our corporate team. All of the people on our corporate team have been brought to us. We've known them through other avenues, through work. And so we have just, if Chad and I have a unique ability, it is to surround ourselves with people that are smarter than us. And so we could go through, like Chad said, and name every single person and what makes them, kind of what their superpower is. And you put them all together, and it's been really good. So we want to give them the credit that they deserve, because they've been instrumental in the scalability of what we're doing. But they're all awesome people that are our family now. As far as the marketing goes, to a quick, long story short, a friend of mine who's been a patient in the past, she came to me at one point and said, "Hey, I'm doing digital marketing, Facebook marketing, and I think I can help your chiropractic practice. Are you up for it?" And I was like, "Hell no." No, I get approached by this 10 times a week. No. And so, but I love her, but I just was very skeptical. I'm the ultimate skeptic. She came back numerous times until finally she said, "Look, I will do it for free for a month. You just have to give me the metrics to show me what did or didn't happen so I could use you as a case study. And I mean, I couldn't turn that down. I tried, but I couldn't find a polite way to turn it down. And then she did incredible. So I'm in a little bitty town. And at that point in time in my practice, if we saw 40 new patients a month, that was a good month. Like 10 a week, 40 a month. I'm on par with where I was hitting my numbers. I think we did like 96 new patients our first month with her, like 147 my second month with her. And this is back in the day where I've done spinal screenings and killer ads and lunch and learns and dinner talks and teacher massages and door to door. Like we've all done all that stuff and it's all great. But all of a sudden I was at home with my family and people were opting in, scheduling appointments, coming in, getting what we need. And they're getting better. We're doing better. So it was amazing. And so I'm like, holy cow. So I put her in contact with 10 of my closest friends. I did a private Zoom call with 10 friends. They all still to this day use her marketing company. And since then, she's a private coach for Russell Brunson. And in that marketing world, she's just been incredible. So she's been an extreme blessing to us. When we started Genesis, I said, Chad, let's do online. Because if you go to a spinal screening, everybody with a pulse in a spine is a potential patient. But for what we do with decompression, we are looking for bulging, herniated, or degenerative disc, and that's it. I rode around in a tractor for years and years and years when I was young on a big ranch, and I would only get AM radio, and I would listen to pastors preach. And there was an old theologian, Scottish guy in New York called Alistair Begg, and he said, keep the main thing the plain thing, and the plain thing the main thing. Obviously, in reference to the gospel, but we keep saying that like all we do is decompression, all we do is disc. It's not disc plus anything else. It's just disc with decompression. And so we're looking for these specific niche patients. And Stephanie, who's a dear friend of ours now, has helped us hone that marketing in where we can attract and generate those patients. And not only did it work here, it started to work on a scale where we're now in 21 states, multiple markets, some of them rural, some of them very metropolitan, some of them in between. And it has been scalable, it's been reproducible. And we have a really great relationship with our web. And so a really good friend of ours handles all of our web, all of our SEO, and all of our Google ads. And so it's kind of a multifaceted approach, but we're really good at generating patients that are actually looking for the service that we have. And that makes life easier for a doctor.
Yeah, I think that's what I saw to kind of summarize this for everybody as I see we're running close to the half hour. You guys you have a specific niche. It works. You've got an avatar of a doc who it fits. You've got a great team that you're onboarding all the systems with. You've built the systems yourself from the inside up, from the EHR, the marketing platforms. So it's very congruent with who you guys are. And then you found great marketers that are in-house for you that are filling up these clinics. And another thing that needs to be talked about is you guys have also developed these great teams that follow up on the leads that are calling, that are, it's not just anybody here who's done social media. We all know it's about the follow-up. You can get people to opt into anything. And you guys have really built that end of the team. So it's been interesting to see the arc of what you guys have done. I know Kevin Priestley, Bart Patzer, Bart is who brought you in, and they've been working with you guys, which are probably two of the most subluxation centered, incredible folks we can name drop from UAC, which just kind of brought you guys in as everybody knowing, well, if Kevin and Bart signed off on these guys, that they must be pretty good people. So it's unique. I think a lot of our, we've got different people building different programs to help chiropractors in different ways than you are with decompression. But I think the model is applicable whether somebody's doing functional health for clinics or lasers or supplements or some other device, or there's a lot that they can glean from the path that you guys have been on. And so I guess my last question is, you're still practicing, both of you in your own decompression clinic, Dr. Chad over in Grapevine, and you, Caleb, in your chiro clinic up in Van Alstyne, and you guys are still in your main Genesis clinic in McKinney. When do you guys step out of that role? Like, are you still figuring that out? Do if this thing goes to 75, 100, and 150, do you have clarity on what the exit is? Where does that, I'm just kind of curious. We're all on this ride with you guys. We're your cheerleaders. How do you guys see that unfolding?
Yeah, that's a
It's
good.
something that we're working on.
Yeah,
So we're definitely working on phasing ourselves out of a little less of the day-to-day patient practice aspect of it. Because one of the things that does make what we do very unique is we've developed full access to Dr. Chad and myself. And so if one of our partners is about to walk into a consult and they see an MRI they're not familiar with, they see a condition they're not certain is a contraindication, what have you, they have unfiltered access to where they can message us and we immediately message them back. And we're like living in their pocket, if you will, is kind of what we always say. And so in order for that's one of the greatest aspects of our success is partners have unfiltered access to Dr. Chad and I and our team for various other things. But from a patient care standpoint to Chad and myself, so in order for us to continue to do that, that's the most important aspect for me and Chad, that never falters, it never fails. And so we still love seeing patients. And we feel like we're honing our skills every day. Our close rates are getting better than they've ever been. Us teaching and helping is helping us be even better. So it's fun. But we do understand how we're going to kind of start to phase ourselves out of some of the day-to-day just so we can be there for the asset to our partners and they have all the access they need. So
yeah, cool. 2 quick questions, guys, from the UAC group. One's from Joel. I'm not exactly clear on this. I think the question is, when did you know to set up or create or purchase your next clinic? But I think to clarify, you guys didn't. You guys came together on the first Genesis, and then every clinic thereafter was inside of another doctor's. It wasn't you guys deciding we're going to open clinic 2, 3. That's where the model was born immediately, was our friend wants to do Genesis inside. Can you speak to that briefly? I mean, how do you guys do the corporate setup? Who owns Genesis? Do you mind sharing some of those details of how you set that up?
Yeah. So, I mean, Genesis Corporate is owned by Caleb and I. And then what we do is we'll partner with each doc in their office. So we set it up to where we create a new entity. Our big thing was we didn't want to do like a franchise. We didn't want to sign you up and then set the wheel in motion. You have a bad month. You still got to pay us a $3,800 fee. We didn't want any of that. We don't make money unless the doctor, our partner, makes money. And so it's set up real unique that way. And so we have a new entity, we do partner splits and all that. I didn't know if you want me to go into super detail about how all that works.
I think that's probably a high enough level for everybody. Okay. You guys do percentage splits and pay out overhead. And I will say the numbers are very favorable for the doc who you're opening the clinic in. Steve G asked, is the doctor ultimately responsible for the sale? And if so, how much training is involved and what's the average lead conversion percentage for your successful practices?
Great question. So the doctor does, we train the doctors. Everybody that's a partner with ours flies to Dallas. They go in live consults with me. They go in live consults with Chad. They see that process from the inside out. They've got access to hundreds upon hundreds of live recordings of us working with real patients. So we teach our consult, like what the sales cycle is, not only just how to confirm a true candidate for what we do, how we're going to treat them, but then how we position that in such a way that it's the only logical solution to the problem that they're facing. And when we do that, we win. And so the doctor is responsible for that aspect of it. We have around a 50% close rate. I think that might have been one of the questions. So it's not like that it's all pie in the sky numbers where you have to excel and you have to close every single person for it to be lucrative. If you're closing 50% of the patients, the numbers get almost unbelievable, and so it does really well. I think
it's fair to say your better clinics do north of 100,000 a month on 15, 20% overhead on that number. They're very profitable.
It is wild. Like, it's almost, sometimes you have to see the numbers to go, wow. And then there's always the outlier. It's like, well, maybe that might just be a unique situation or a unique doctor. But now to have the scalability that we have, you can actually see it in mass and you can see how many offices are where. And so the averages come in, and that really helps us because we're not working in Well, in this market or this market, it's like we can see the overall, and we've got KPIs, key performance indicators in every aspect, and a full dashboard. So you can see moment to moment, day to day, exactly where you're at, how you're performing, what areas are over or underperforming. And then that's our job on our side, is to see, hey, where are there problems that we can shore up? And so we look at it more like a blood test. Dr. Steve G would know better than anybody. But when you look at that blood test, you see where are the deficiencies and how do we supplement those deficiencies? And so that's our job on our side, is to supplement those deficiencies and get everything firing on all cylinders.
Yeah. And I think that's back to why you guys work with successful chiropractors, I see, is you're not having to train the sales part of it. These people have already been doing that in their own offices in their own ways. So I think it's pretty easy for them.
Yeah, most of them are uniquely gifted. So to wrap it up,
please. I'll
take it all back to hunting, right? So we started with hunting, but for doctors, because there's so many guys in this room that are just, it's an incredible room or group to be a part of, because people are all scaling at various different levels. And I think about it like a rifle. So if you take a rifle and you're going to shoot something, let's just say a target, non-living target at 10 yards, well, you have a lot of room for error because the target's so close. But as that target goes out to a further distance, a 1 inch move at the barrel here doesn't make much of a difference. But at 100 yards, you're not even on paper. And so one of the things that Chad and I have tried to do for our own office, for our initial office, is how do we tighten this thing up to where we're grouping so tight that we can go out to 1,000 yards? Because we learned the hard way that as we start to scale, if you're not on target, the more distance you get from the actual rifle barrel, the more the deficiency shows up. It's like, man, we're all over the paper and there's no consistency. But when you can dial that thing in, and you're hitting 3 holes in the same hole, then you can go out to 500 yards, 1,000 yards, 1,200 yards, and you're still where you want to be. And so we're always just trying to hone this in. Our mantra is edit, refine, edit, refine, edit, refine, to where it does become scalable and we're not all over the paper. So that would be my advice to anybody scaling anything, is it has to work at a short distance if it's going to work at all at a long distance.
Wow. Well said. Well, guys, thanks for sharing your IP, your journey, your experience. I know this will get a lot of juices going. You guys will probably get some questions from folks, and you've always been so generous with your time. So thank you for that. And I know you've got some schedule stuff, but really hope you guys can figure out how to get out to Beverly Hills, because it's going to be an epic event for UAC here in February. So thanks, guys.
On that, yeah. We'll see you
Perfect, Chad. Good. Can't wait. I know the group hasn't gotten to meet you. A lot of people gotten to meet Caleb yet. So thank you, guys. Appreciate your time. Have an awesome day. We'll see you.
God bless.